like prejudiced view against Arabs as well.
Right.
So it's so like reading a story from a Turkish writer about these women, that was quite nice.
And I think I very much agree with you on that actually, because we are very prejudiced towards the Arabic nations, and it's because we kind of aspire to the rest. But I absolutely love this book, and one of the reasons why I wanted to come to this was because for the first time ever in the last, let's say, few decades, even more than that, I actually found a book that can write about the woman, the Turkish woman, the Western woman, the Arabic woman in a very realistic way, in a way that maybe only the Middle East can understand that woman that well. You know how you were saying, Italy, I'm not sure where you're from. From Italy. One of the reasons why I really love this book, because I didn't find anything pretentious about this book. And I find that in the last few decades, I don't know if Begin would agree with me, but a lot of authors in Turkey feel and felt that they had to write and overwrite certain subjects in a way that just to appeal to wider audiences. And I mean, for example, in my opinion, Elif Shafak is a very good example of that. But in this book, I find that Ece Temel Kıran explains the geopolitical situation very well. I know how you said that you didn't find the Orient that you thought you were going to find. And that, what you said to me, gave me a bit of a deja vu, because when I was in Istanbul, I was working with a foreign business woman and man, and acting as a guide for them, and but in a business sense. And when they came to Istanbul, they always said, we didn't find the Orient that we were looking for. And to a Turkish person, I think it's because of the things that Begin said, to a Turkish person, that's almost like an insult, because it is not. It is a bridge, and so I don't think. You remember that Sex and the City scene?
Yes.
Doesn't that explain well that we are all women at the end of the day? Our needs, our pain, our aspirations are the same. Women who want to be loved and but be powerful at the same time. We want to be understood, and that exists in every country. And another thing I found, I don't want to go on, but I think Ece, and I could see through her articles as well, I think she is one of very few people who understands Middle East.
Right.
Extremely well. The Arab Spring, I think she writes beautifully about that, from the point of an Arabic person, from the point of a Turkish person who went through so much lately. I think I would very much like to continue reading on her stuff, because I think it's a book that I understand. I'm not even going into details yet. I'm sorry if I...
Yeah, no, not at all. Kristen, what was your impression?
I found the book very interesting because I was expecting it to be more focused on other aspects of like more on the geopolitical scene rather than the travel that these three women or four women actually go through.
Yeah.
Especially the one that I thought was the best developed of all of them was Miriam's story, because she starts off as this like very closed off person, and then you kind of like go through like with her through the trouble of like she was pregnant, etc., and like how she kind of grows into the role and becomes more out of that like she kind of starts liberating herself from the cultural constraints that she lives in a very conservative culture. Whereas, for instance, I actually think that the person who takes the role of the observer, you know very little about her, and you don't actually learn much about it throughout the book. So Turkey is always just like this thing that is alluded to once or twice throughout the book, but outside of that, she actually stays the character that is the least developed of them all. Amira, I found a little bit disappointing in terms of her development, because she starts off as this like child girl who doesn't seem to have a care in the world. Then the letters with Muhammad kind of seemed to give her additional depth, although I found them somewhat confusing, to be very honest.
Yes.
And then the story just kind of fizzles out and it doesn't actually go anywhere.
Yes.
So outside of her from the get-go wanting to have this dance studio and then at the end actually getting her dance studio in one way or another, like I don't think her character develops that much, which I found a little disappointing. But overall, I found it fascinating to see like how three complete strangers become really close, because like this can happen very easily in reality as well, and then you go through so much and all of them are kind of lost, but together they manage to find each other again. So I found this was like a beautiful story arc, and actually like many of the concepts that they were talking about, like being rejected by someone or just wanting to be loved and accepted, like that's just something that kind of like resonates with me as well. So like from that perspective I found it really interesting, and also to know that you are in this different setting, in this different cultural background, but as you said, the same thing still applies. Women just want to be like,
it's like a universal,
loved, taken seriously.
It's a universal thing,
exactly.
Isn't it? Yeah, exactly. And Tasha, how about you?
For me, I don't know much about the politics of it at all. So coming into it, it was quite dense, and it's something that I struggled with a little bit at first. But what I really liked were the women in it were really relatable. So for me, when I was watching the news on, Arab Spring and protests and stuff, you kind of get a bit numb to it, and you're just like, okay, it's another story. But this brought it down to a really personal, kind of humanistic level of these 4 women, and even some of the other outside characters and their personal relationships with what's been happening and what's been going on, which is something that I really liked. And also like you said, there are flashpoints of what's happening, and it makes you want to find out more about, okay, what exactly were the reasons. And because there's not much explanation of how it came about, you're kind of thrown into it in the middle.
Absolutely.
And it made me want to go away and want to find out more about what were the situations that brought kind of this about, as well, because you're numb to it, and a lot of the landscapes, like the deserts and these small villages, are things that I would never see or know or understand. So it's bringing, for a Western audience, it's bringing this different world to them, and showing them that this new world basically that exists right now while we're busy with our lives. This is all happening, and it's something that's affecting people on a very real level, which I really liked. And the structure was a bit difficult for me, because Ajay starts off the chapter with a kind of flash forward. But that's actually what kept me captivated, because it's like, okay, so I know this is going to happen. And she always ends that flash forward with, oh, it was the events of the day that led to this. I was like, okay, what are these events of the day? Okay, I want to find out. And I feel it was similar to Madame Leela's, the way she used to tell her stories. Like, she'd always give like little teasers, and then you'd feel that frustration with the women that know there's more, and what is that? So it kept me really captivated to like continue reading and finding out more. And the way she was very slowly bringing out little details of everyone's stories, and the way that those stories linked, like there's parts of Dido's tablets that are linking to Muhammad's letters, and they're linking to this one sentence that Madame Leela says, and it reminds them of something that they've read. And I just think how she's done that is incredible. Like, and she's thrown so much in. Like you said, they're crossing borders, they're crossing times, they're going like centuries in the past, and at the same time they're talking about listening to Amy Winehouse. Do you know what I mean? It's just like everything's so beautifully linked together, which I really liked, and I actually want to read it again, because there's so much in it that I feel like I need to go back and kind of. I'm sure there's so many links that I missed.
No, I think that's it. I think I think that you're right, because she just kind of sort of almost kind of teases you with those little details, and it makes you want to keep reading about the characters themselves, especially at the end. So you'll find out what happens. The end is very different, So she kind of teases those details, to you.
Also, she mentioned Sherazade, so just giving the hint of the next
exactly.
Exactly. And I think I think in terms of the characters as well, I think for me, there's obviously the other central theme, which I thought was great, the story about the whole title, really, Women Are Not. That's something I really pick up, in the interview with her, that the kind of meaning behind it, and it kind of talks about, I think, for me, what I understood from it was the fact that, men feared women not because and respected them, but she said that they respected them because they were fearful of them. That makes sense, you see, and they respected their power. Rather than respect them as strong, independent, intelligent women, they respected them. They were fearful because they thought they were powerful. You see, it's that power that fear stems from that power. So it wasn't like there was a healthy relationship between men and women. It wasn't like there was any equality. It wasn't like a recognition of respect for someone's intelligence. It was an acknowledgement of it. It was like they were fearful of women, and they said that they had some sort of sorcery. There was sorcery of women, he calls it. And in the story, Ece kind of touches on that, how women would obviously play on that fear, and use that fear to their advantage, really. So that for me was interesting, the idea of that kind of relationship between men and women, that power balance, really. And I just thought it was kind of quite archaic, really, if I'm honest. That thing, that sorcery of women, So as I say, it's very different from. I'm not saying the West is perfect, but that idea in the West, at least the idea is you respect them for who they are. They chose not because they're women, but they're intelligent. But you're not fearful of them. And I think in this particular idea, the idea of men fearing women, that's for me was quite interesting.
And maybe that's why they try to suppress, and therefore they can only suppress that by showing violence, by trying to keep them under their thumb.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But it's
how
interesting
she
because if she
describes
was an intelligent, powerful woman, somehow she's a sorcerer.
Exactly.
It's just quite
So as if it
archaic
is wrong.
notion. Yeah, it's very archaic idea, really. So that's something that was interesting for me. But also the idea, I think, throughout the book, the focus on stories, really. The idea that you tell stories, you have meanings that stories are loaded with meanings, really. And for me, the book tended to focus quite heavily on that. It wasn't like passing information. It was like the idea of telling stories and giving that information in stories. So that was the other kind of interesting thing for me, really. I think among the characters, I have to agree with you actually, because I think for me there was a lot of focus on Amira, really, and I appreciate that she's the youngest or seems the youngest, and somehow there's a relation between Miriam, obviously, because Miriam sees Amira as the kind of youngest, and there's a protective instinct, almost maternal instinct, which you don't quite see until the very, very end. She's almost like in denial almost of it. I thought with Amira, the character didn't really develop in a linear way, really. And by that I mean, normally you'd expect to be teased out a bit more about the detail, and you learn a little bit more, and it becomes rounded. Character. But I didn't get that impression at the end.
No, and it finished very abruptly, didn't it?
It did,
Just suddenly they found out that they weren't going to do anything about it.
Yeah,
and there was
that's
bribery
it.
and
That's it. And I couldn't really understand her motivation for her and Mohammed for hating Mohammed. I couldn't get the drive behind that.
I think my understanding of that was mostly that he left her
Yes.
behind. I think that was just like
It was almost like he kept in touch.
the broken heart, kind of.
He never really quite fulfilled, their destiny was, I think, really, wasn't it? It's like,
I think so.
yeah, it was almost unrequited, wasn't it, really? But I thought it could be a stronger motivation. But Madame Leela was just a character I loved, really. Just so strong as well. I think as well, for me, the irony of the book, for me personally, is that she's representing three quite strong women who are taking their own steps and initiatives, but they're still very much defined by men in some shape or form. And that's what I took away from the end. I'm thinking, here's three very strong, very independent, very intelligent women, forging their own way in the world, very emotionally strong, but they're very much defined by women, by men. Sorry. So Madame Villa is seeking vengeance against her past lover. Mira's obviously sort of feels a love spurt. The character that's most curious for me really was obviously the observer, which you didn't quite sort of see.
Yeah, her
Where
story.
how was you defined really as a person? Really, I think she was more an observer, really. And for me as well, what's kind of curious, well, I'll pick this up in an interview with her, is that you know, she was obviously a journalist in the story character. She's a journalist. She's a writer as well. And it was only at the end, right at the end, that she decides to document things, you know, by writing on the back of a toilet seat. I thought it was really humorous, you know. But I thought, as a journalist or a writer, you have a natural curiosity to document, to write, to seek out, you know, to tell the truth. And I didn't get that from most of the story, really. As an observer, yes, but I didn't get the idea of documenting and writing.
But I think it wasn't a part of her character development that basically at the beginning, when she starts out, she's really lost because she's just lost her
Yes.
job. She's really afraid of going back to Turkey.
Yes.
And for her, like, she felt like she was a journalist until that moment, and now she's not really anymore because she doesn't dare to be one because she might be thrown into prison back at home. She's just been
Yes.
fired from her job. So she's basically just taking a break. And so in my interpretation, at least, like the way that her character develops is like she's really lost and doesn't know how her life is. Like, she was defined as being a journalist and now she's not anymore, and then she's finding back to that slowly but surely. And she actually develops from being a journalist to more being a writer and a documenter.
Yes.
Kind of. So I think that's how I see her story
Yeah.
arc. I'm not sure I fully understand why in the last scene she is sitting in the garden and can't write. That I find counterintuitive.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
if she is supposed to have found back to like her old self kind of and start documenting and writing everybody's end and writing everybody's story, why is then the last picture you get from her just sitting in a garden not quite knowing what she wants to write? But
But I wondered about that because Madame Lila, right from the beginning, wanted to give her that story, didn't she? And she kind of comments on that a few times. She's trying to give her that story at every stage. And I wondered that she couldn't write, she couldn't kind of complete the story and give it an ending before she went home.
oh yeah,
I wondered,
maybe.
you know, was that going to be the end? Finally, everything could lie on the paper. That's the thing I thought. And I thought of Madame Lila as a person in all three of them.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Yeah.
and all three of them actually had bits from each other, didn't they? Because they were all mother. They all seemed to love.
Yeah.
Maybe except the observer, but then she would have had love somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and it seemed like the characters were, what is the word? Intertwined.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was Madame Lila in all of them, there was Amira in all of them, and so on, wasn't there? But that's what I thought.
Did you see Madame Lila as some kind of almost like their inner voice? You know, that they saw Madame as like their inner voice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like a maternal
I
thing.
do,
Almost.
yeah.
She had that kind of image for me as well, being someone maternal. You know.
Yeah.
And I say like that inner voice, that she could say things that really sort of, you know, related to them on a deeper level, really, I think, you know. But the least maternal person you would think of, you know, considering her lifestyle, you know, she was very much someone who, you know, was always very. I think as well this idea of movement and travel, you know, is very prevalent throughout the story as well. But yeah, for me, Madeleine was just not quite a character, almost kind of mythical character, you know. Just, do you know what I mean? It's just there was nothing. It was more like Mira and Miriam that were kind of strong characters, but that were kind of very not rounded, but sort of tangible. I mean, you know. But Mademoiselle Madame Lila, she almost was like a mythical character. You know, it's almost spiritual or something about magical.
Somebody
Yeah,
compares it to Mata Hari at some stage,
That's
like
right.
you know, like a mythical figure,
Exactly.
like half real, half mythical.
And I think
Just got this past. Or,
it's almost absolutely. I think that's the kind of impression I had of her, you know. But great. I mean, obviously, talking magical. Some people said that the book sort of touches on magic realism which obviously we know is, had been used previously. Did anyone get that impression that it was about magic, in power of magic as well?
You see, I didn't.
I didn't.
No.
I only thought of the magic, and that's, the title, Woman Who Blows.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Because that's about sorcerers and so on, and the crowns and the woman as, a dangerous thing and so on. But no, I didn't, because I tend to see that in books like Isabella Allende or Elif Shafak, but I didn't see it. I thought it was
not
very
in that
realistic.
way.
No, it wasn't.
I like the characters she gave to this woman, and I like the way she told their stories. Yeah.
Can I ask, did you read the English version or did you read the original?
Both. But
Did you
I
find
must
them very
admit,
different?
I read the Turkish version when the book first came out. And I actually left this book on the bus between Istanbul and Çanakkale because my parents live in Çanakkale. I left it there. So when I saw your thing, I thought, oh my god, I'm gonna read it again. But I hadn't read it. I hadn't actually finished the book. So and when I arrived in Çanakkale, the book wasn't there anymore. So I said, shall I buy the book? And I thought, I'll just download it and read it in English. Then I tried the translation things.
Do you think there's a lot
But
that
I
we're
think it's a
losing?
very
Or
good, I think it's a very good translation. There are little things like, in the Turkish version she talks about, kırmızı biber, which you and I know as chili flakes, aren't they? But in this book, he describes the kırmızı biber as red peppers, which is not chili flakes. But little things like that. When I thought it was a very good translation.
I think translation is just, I think we kind of overlook sometimes the job of a translator really is incredible. I mean, past books, the good thing is now they're being recognised now because of the International Man Booker Prize, which never before, but I think in 2015 now they award actual translators. So you had the International Man Booker Prize, Han Kang's novel, as Korean author. Now you've got the actual translator being awarded as well, the prize as well. So it is great they're being recognised, but it's such a difficult thing to do, to capture the essence of that book, So it is incredible. But
I quite liked it, he left some of the bits the way she wrote, like, how we say Allah Allah, so he translates it, leaves it as that, because in Turkey, whenever we are, even when we're not religious, I'm not, for example, and but even though when I'm in Wanda, I say, oh, Allah, but he translates that right,
So that's more kind of like a comedic thing, really, rather, And that's the one thing she does actually, in writing a story. I mean, you could have been quite serious, quite somber story, but she injects humour into the story, and I think you kind of, it makes you engage a little bit more, with the story. I think there are some critical elements to the book. I think for those who may not be familiar with it, but it does encourage you, to want to find out a little bit more about it. I think we're so used to seeing representations in the media, and we kind of, it's almost become kind of repetitive in a way, so we don't really kind of take opportunity to find out what's going on, get very one-dimensional. So she's managed to do that, she's managed to kind of bring that to it, but it's a tough thing to do, I think, to be political and at the same time make a story that people want to read, really, in the day, because people may not be particularly politically minded, so, and it connects. So,
although, do you think that there is a political message that she's trying to convey?
well, this is something I was going to pick up into with her, really. What if there is a messaging behind being a journalist, herself, being quite outspoken, and she was trying to convey something. But that's a good.
Yeah, I felt so. I felt that there was a political message in the book. Women's place in the Arab Spring, how it is not as simple as the West sees it. The Arab Spring, West just saw it as a positive thing. But I like the way how she describes it in a very different way from different perspectives for each country. How disastrous it was in Libya and how different it was in Syria, how it was brought on by the powerful woman, and even the little disagreements in that, how that woman in Syria perceived. I thought that was a very strong political message.
I mean, there's a lot of like symbolism in the book, isn't there? I think, rather than straight, there's a lot of like symbolism in the book. I mean, in terms of her character, the one thing I felt would have been good, I think would have been nice to see was more of really was just how she sees women in Turkey, really. What is the kind of general thinking, really, and how are they seen? I would have loved to have got a bit of a kind of under the hood, as it were, view from herself in the book.
Next book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I would have liked to have seen that. Really, I think it would have added a few more layers to the onion. I think.
Or maybe she's given that in other books. I don't know what
Yeah.
she's
I think
written
so,
about.
yeah.
Written a lot about it. So
Right.
maybe in this book she wanted to
Maybe
leave that.
It's
Yes.
like fiction.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
She does still talk about it a bit in the book. She does still talk about the problems she's having as a journalist and as a woman in Turkey,
Yes.
doesn't she?
She
And,
touches on that. I think that's
yeah.
more kind of a profession. I think for me, just good to just get a broad brush view of women, how they're seen and so forth, and the idea of quality as well, really, because that's very much on the agenda now. So I would have liked to have seen that as well. But yeah, no, I think it's an kind of expansive book, really. I think to tackle it is quite brave to say, to do that as well.